Everybody, Lance Russell and Dave Brown, and we're right along ringside all ready to kick it off for another big day.
We're live from STS Studios in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and I have my co-host here. Was it really that good? Hey, Gene Jackson, how the hell are you?
I'm doing well, and hey, you got the name of the show right out of the gate, so this is going to be a good one, man.
Yeah, that's two months in a row. I'm excited about this show. There's very many reasons, but number one, this is kind of where I started my fandom. I started watching Memphis Wrestling, and it's Memphis Wrestling that I started watching, and so it's right there where it all started. August the 4th, 1978 was my first live show, so I had not watched wrestling on television. I did go when I was like 3 years old, and I cried a lot, so I remember that, but that doesn't count. I was in Blytheville, Arkansas, and why I'm saying this, because some of the guys that we're going to talk about, I had Jerry Lawler was on the card against John Louis, and then we had the Kisser, Wayne Ferris, who just in a few months we're going to be talking about him. He's on the show. Lawler, did the makeup for him. And then we had Hans Schroeder. I seen Bearcat Brown. I don't remember none of this. All I remember is Lawler and the Kisser. The Kisser scared the shit out of me. So, on this show that we're watching today, it was on November 11th, 1978. I was 12 years old, and it was my birthday. Oh. So this all means a whole bunch to me right here. And so, let's get started with the show. The very first thing, and this is, I want to call this the Jimmy Valiant show. It's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, no doubt.
Did you notice that when Jimmy comes out, we get a huge pop when he comes out? Or when, not before he even came out, when Dave announced he was going to be there.
Yeah, I noticed that. Just for a little bit of perspective from my end, I was born July 8th of 1977. So I was a little over a year and a half here. So this is all just from watching it. There's no recollection at all. My memories of wrestling start forming around 85, 86. But it was interesting to watch nonetheless, for sure.
Yeah, I thought it was because I went back and looked at some history of what was going on during this year. What had happened earlier in the year in 1978 was a big feud with Lawler and Valiant. And Valiant was the heel, and it looked to draw some really good gates. They went weeks. You know how you could go weeks with doing it. It seemed like every week they were doing something. They also had, one of the times that they wrestled, they did a hair versus hair. And the note is that they had a riot at the Mid-South Coliseum.
Wow.
Because, guess what? They didn't shave anybody's hair. So there you go.
Well, that'll do it.
So they built that. Valiant left. He came back. Was a babyface when he came back. Well, until this show. So it starts out with Valiant and Ferris against Danny Davis and Sammy Holt.
So, Rosie was in the room last night when I was watching it. She was playing her Nintendo Switch, but looking up ever so often. And she didn't want to believe me when I told her that Jimmy Valiant's partner would go on to be the Honky Tonk Man, and that Danny Davis was actually Nightmare Danny Davis of the Nightmares. So this match was interesting to me because I've wrestled Jimmy Valiant a couple of times, and Sammy Holt's son, Bubba Holt, was trained at the same time and place that I was, and he was a referee for Sammy Hall, the promoter I worked for. So I heard a lot of stories about his dad and Memphis Wrestling and going to TV and stuff like that. So I took a special interest in this match right out of the gate.
Yeah, you know what I wrote? I actually wrote down, it says Sammy Holt, Tupelo, Mississippi, and I wrote Sammy Hall as a question mark because for some reason I thought, well, what the hell? What's going on here? That's awesome. Did you have any stories that you remember, like they beat the fuck out of me and stuff like that?
That was most of the stories he had. But as most guys who did a lot of squash matches, for lack of a better word, Memphis, his dad concurred with most everybody else. The worst beatings he ever took in his life was against the Moondogs at different times.
Yeah, we actually talked about Spot Moondog with Dustin Starr as a top, one of the top tag teams. I'm not going to tell you where they they landed, but we did. That's and the thing about it is they just beat the hell out of everybody, and everybody remembers the Moondogs. Like you said, look at Danny Davis and Wayne Ferris here. Ferris was really green. Danny didn't get a lot of anything, but he you could kind of see he knew what the hell he was doing. Now, if Josh from P3 Radio has not seen this Danny Davis is actually his shoot uncle. He needs to go back and look at this. This was probably one of his first matches, especially in Memphis. Something I noticed about Valiant, and me and Bo James this week, I can't remember if it was Patreon or on the regular show, we talked about Valiant and how the Valiant during this time is, I can see why I become such a fan of his, and his punches. His punches are beautiful, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was one thing that really stood out to me, and it's like looking at handsome Jimmy here compared to the Boogie Woogie Man that I grew up on, and you know, the guy that I wrestled, you know, in the 90s. You know, it's kind of hard to watch him in that era and go, man, how was he such a draw, and how was he, you know, a world tag team champion in WWF and all that. But when you go back and see this version, and especially the heel version, I love the heel version of Handsome Jimmy in Memphis. You really can see, you know, why he was such a draw. But like you said, the first thing that stood out to me watching his show was the huge pop at just the mere mention of his name by Dave Brown, who was rocking a very, very stylish suit in this show, by the way.
Dave and Lance were just so good. We've said it 100 times. And it's just, it's beautiful hearing them call stuff like this. And Valiant, in the interview, this next segment, the interview with Lance, you can watch Lance the way he used to, we talked about this before, the way he led the people in the interview. Because Valiant would not pay attention. The Valiant was not, he was all over the place, talked about, he actually said boogie woogie in this. So I thought that was funny. I was like, oh, man, that's foreshadowing what will happen.
Yeah.
But he talked about Burt Reynolds and Sally Fields just dropped him off of the limousine, and that Burt dropped him something, and he'd been up for 48 hours.
Yeah, the lack of subtlety to that kind of stuff back in those days. And it's funny, because I was there watching, I was like, was anybody watching this really believing that Burt Reynolds and Sally Field just dropped him off? Like, that's just crazy talk, but
well, Gene, he's
man,
part of the
Lance,
music industry now. He's part of the
yeah.
music. Him and Bob Seger sold out the Mid-South Coast. No, the Madison Square Garden.
The man, I mean, like you said, we've talked about it before, but I just really can't stress enough how underrated and how Lance Russell does not get enough credit for how he steered. Because, you know, the shows back then were 80% promos, you know, and the fact that Lance, you know, steered those promos and guys like Valiant who were naturally, I don't know the word to say
all
there,
over
but,
the fucking
you know,
place.
all over the place,
yes,
and may have had some other help by his own admission.
Oh, very much so.
The fact that he could steer those on live TV and keep them somewhat between the ditches, man, he deserved way more credit than he got for that.
I thought it was funny because Valiant said nothing about, he said he was in the record business, blah, 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 and he didn't say anything about the song or the record until Lance said something. Lance had to steer him to that point that, hey, that's the point we're making. So Lance did it, and I was just marking out for Lance. What we're going to do right now, I just want to say it was a huge mark for Jimmy Valiant during this run. I had turned against Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee, and I was a Valiant fan. In this song, I bought the 45 of this song. I want to play the song right now, and then we'll go into talking about other stuff. But I want to tell you, I told this to Scott Bowden on the show, and I want to tell this story. I actually drew a Jimmy Valiant tattoo on my arm during this time, and
wow.
I was appalled. I mean, appalled that my librarian did not know who Jimmy Valiant was by my drawing on my arm.
That is a tremendous story on so many levels. Wow, Brian.
I said, do you see that? And she was like, yeah, why did you do that? I said, do you know who it is? And she's like, no. I said, it's Jimmy Valiant. Oh, my God, it's Jimmy Valiant. You know, how did she not know that? All right, guys.
Probably sitting around reading books. God bless her.
Yeah, that's the biggest bookmark, too. But we're going to play the song, and we're going to a commercial break right after the song, and then we're going to come back and talk about the rest of the show.
Woo! Let's sing it, mama! Let's do it, daddy! I came rolling into Memphis, TWA. Tell all the ladies, handsome Jimmy's on his way. I'm a rocker and a roller, a little funky too. I was raised by a gypsy, you know, handsome's cool. I was born in New York City, San Francisco town. Tell all the women, handsome Jimmy's on the prowl. I'm a rocker and a roller, a little funky too. I was raised by a gypsy, that's why handsome's cool. Smokey Johnson. Woo! No time to talk. Jimmy's on the loose. They can run and hide, but they can't fly the coop. I'm a rocker and a roller, a little funky too. I was raised by a gypsy, you know, baby, handsome's cool. I was raised by a gypsy, you know, mama, handsome's cool. I was raised by a gypsy, handsome, you're so cool. I was raised by a gypsy, that's why handsome, you must be cool. Woo, I love it, daddy, we gonna do it forever, mama. Get down, baby, do it to death. Woo, mercy.
All right, Mercy Daddy, Son of the Gypsy. All right, guys, you can tell I'm the biggest mark for that song. I bought the 45, and I found the 45 in the song, so I put it on this. Right after Gene and I go off the air, before we do the send-off, you'll hear the flip side, or the B-side. It was god-awful, by the way, but I want everyone to hear the B-side. So they show the video, Valiant leaves, Lawler Dundee come out with the interview, talking about, this is where they come out and said that they were going to, there was a petition, and they needed someone to sign a petition.
Yes, for Heather Feather. I kind of dozed off a little bit in here, if I'm being honest. I kind of missed a little bit of this portion of what exactly they were talking about, but then I kind of picked up on it later when the payoff happened. So you might can explain this better than I can.
Well, what happened is that the Heather Feather actually worked a bear and lasted 3 minutes, so she now wanted to work a man. They brought out a petition so she could work a man, but there's actually a ruse, and it was a contract. And Chuck Malone, and I couldn't find anything about this guy. Chuck Malone was the manager of the Bounty Hunters, and he came out before the Bounty Hunters match, and he signed the petition, but, you know, the old ruse where it was actually a contract, and he had to wrestle Heather Feather at the Mid-South Coliseum.
Yeah, that was always a go-to, the old contract ruse of various natures. But yeah, I was like you. I was like, who the hell's Chuck Malone? And I did a Google search, and it didn't turn up much. But he had some heat with the crowd there in the studio, at least.
Right, yeah, they knew who he was. I thought it was funny, the Bounty Hunters match, he had to sit in a chair.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so we didn't, when it come to managers, we wasn't jumping around or doing anything, but he he actually was part of the finish when he did a pile driver on Jackie Welch. Could you believe that?
I had to rewind it back because I actually one of the cats had did something. I had looked away, and then I heard him say he gave him a pile driver. I'm like, well, that made it sound like the manager gave the pile driver. Hold on, and then I rewound it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's what happened. Wow, all right. Never saw Jimmy Hart pile driver anybody.
No. And just a trivia note, my personal trivia, I have not. You are a huge autograph person, and I'm not. I never have been. Of the autographs I've had in the wrestling business, Jerry Lawler had his autograph. Coco Beware, had his autograph, but the other guy was the famous Jackie Welch. So I had Jackie Welch's dollar photograph and his autograph at one time. So 3 or 4 autographs is all I got. So Jackie gets abused by the bounty hunters with that pile driver look nasty, and then Lawler and Dundee actually ran out and helped Robert Gibson on the save there. And Chuck Malone actually said when talking about that match with Heather Feather, I'm going to wrestle that gorilla. So I don't know nothing about Heather Feather, but in my mind, that was racist. I was like, oh my God, she must have been a big girl, so who knows?
Yeah, either way, that wouldn't fly today, I don't believe.
Up next was the highlight of the show for many reasons. We had the turning, the start of the turn of Valiant coming out during the Lawler Dundee interview. And all Valiant wants to do is have a 6-man tag.
That's all.
That's all. Him, Dundee, Lawler against the Bounty Hunters and Chuck Malone. Man, why can't you do that? Lawler also notes that Chuck Malone has agreed to put his hair up too, which he ended up getting shaved. But this interview, Gene, has become infamous on YouTube. Yeah,
I didn't realize this was it. It's been so long since I've seen it because I was telling Rosie as they were out there, like, there's an interview actually on live TV where Lawler called Valiant a fag on television. Like, can you imagine? Like, he would be burned at the stake now. And then a couple minutes later, he says it. She's like, well, this is the one, apparently. I was like, oh, crap, I didn't realize that. Wow. Different time, man. That's all you can say is very, very different time.
It is the interview, not because of the word, it's because of what they do in the interview. As you can watch Valiant just turn, that I just love so much about this interview. And we're going to play it. It's about, I play about 3 minutes of it right here coming up next. And I did it because I actually love this interview and how they turned Valiant.
And I want to say something. I feel a little tension because, the Kingfish is not as popular as he used to be because all the people dig Handsome Jimmy now. You understand? This is what's happening now, baby. Handsome Jimmy's what's happening now. Just a few months Handsome Jimmy's been in Memphis, Tennessee. Hey, already Handsome Jimmy's got his own candy store. Go by, they say, Handsome Jimmy, since you get some free candy, fans. Do it for Handsome Jimmy, baby. That's Overton Square, Daddy. This is what's happening, baby.
You think we're trying to cut you out of the main event, right? What your problem is, Handsome, is we can't cut you out of something you weren't cut in on to begin with. You're not in the main event. We're the main event. What the problem is, you're on a preliminary match. Do you know what a preliminary match is? That's where the promoters put preliminary wrestlers. That's where you are. That's the whole problem.
Let me tell you the whole thing right now. I know exactly what it is, Daddy. You are jealous of Handsome's body, Daddy. You are jealous of my old lady, Daddy. You are jealous of my record, baby. FM 100 plays my record, and they request it daily, Daddy. They request it every minute, baby. You are jealous, Daddy. You are jealous, baby. That's what's happening, Kingfish. You are jealous. You're sick, man. You're very sick, baby.
Let me tell you something, Handsome Jimmy. I'm not jealous of you because let me tell you just exactly what you are. No, you guys don't have to come out here. We'll settle this right now. It ain't no way I'm going to be jealous of a big fag-looking jerk like you. You got bleach blonde hair. You got those long, goofy handlebar mustache. You got a tattoo painted on that queer ear of yours. And you got one fingernail painted silver. Now, what's that for? Huh? You think I'm jealous of you? You're crazy. crazy.
You're right, Daddy. I want to tell you what this is for, baby. This thumbnail is painted because Handsome hitchhikes at night. And this is nothing. This thumb is nothing, Daddy, because you ought to see my toes.
Yeah, you hitchhike at night. You know why you hitchhike at night? I don't think you hitchhike at night. Ever since you've been down in Memphis, as you like to call it, from the Big Apple, you bum rides off of me and Dundee. You didn't even bring a car down here. We have to haul your butt around, and you call it back hitchhiking at night. You don't hitchhike nowhere.
I want to tell you something, baby, right now. This is what's happening, Daddy. Handsome Jimmy's what's happening, baby. I want to tell you something right now. You did this boy wrong. You did this man wrong right here, your own flesh and blood. Your old lady's got skinny legs, and your old lady's got skinnier legs, Daddy.
Let me tell you something, Bad. The only thing you've done since you've been in Memphis is screwed up this boy's mind. You know what I did for him? I did nothing for him because that's what he needed done for him. He needed to make it on his own. What'd you do? You come along, you got his hair bleached out blonde. He looks like a fag just like you. You screwed his mind up. He don't know which way he's going because he's got his nose stuck so far up your rear end that he don't know.
Hey, come on now. Let's
Just keep my name out of it, okay?
Yeah, that's it. Go ahead. Stick with him. He's your real pal here.
All right, Gene. So let me tell you an insult I could give you from Valiant. Your old lady got skinny legs.
Yeah. Man, I've told a lot of guys that, like, different shows I've worked, everything, and, young guys have asked me, hey, whose promos should I study? What promotions should I study, matches? And I've always told people, go back and watch old Memphis with Lawler, Dundee, Jimmy Valiant, Eddie Gilbert, guys like that. I said, Jerry Lawler and Dundee especially just had a way of bringing reality into their interviews and making you believe them. I said they could have, even in the kayfabe era in the 80s, they could have had a camera in the parking lot, showed Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee pull up in a car together, get out, hold hands, walking into the building, walk straight out to the set. They could start talking, and by the end of that promo, you would believe they hated each other's guts and were going to kill each other on Monday night just by the words and the expressions on their faces. That's how good they were at promos. Jimmy Valiant, this promo right here is a prime example of that, as you watch somebody turn in front of your very eyes without, back jumping somebody or doing anything physical. Like you said, it was just the content of the promo. It's pretty amazing.
Classic. Just I love every bit of it. Lawler always talked about, I remember talking to Lawler when they did something a couple of nights after they did that on Raw where somebody talked about his dad or his mom dying. I can't remember who it was. And Lawler said, we always did that. We always put something real in those interviews, and that's why I can bet you what he put real in this interview is that when he said, you came back from New York City and you've been getting a ride with me and Dundee.
Yeah.
And I mean, why would he say that? It had something to do with that. It really
did.
And the part where he said you're in a prelim match. I just loved it. It was really good. After they came back, they apologized. Dave or Lance did and said, that they just lost their cool. So we get into a big feud with Dundee and Lawler later on a few weeks. I think the next week they actually at Mid-South Coliseum against Ferris and Valiant. And they were kind of the prelude to the Blonde Bombers, because Ferris goes on to tag with Larry Latham's Spot and become the Blonde Bombers, pretty much doing the Valiant gimmick. Both of them were in the same kind of tights and the whole 9 yards. And Ferris, we've said this in some of the times I've seen him work. I always liked his work. I always thought he was, even as Honky Tonk Man, everyone gave him hell. But I always liked him. I met him one night at the Mid-South Coliseum before the shows. I was coming through. One of my friends was with me. And she said, she was talking to Jimmy Hart, and Honky Tonk came up, and he introduced himself, super nice guy, but then he had to say something bad about Jerry Jarrett, something about, we give free parking, but I bet he charged arm and leg just for people to park at the Mid-South Coliseum, because he was with WWE at the time.
Yeah.
And so he had to talk about his family, so no friendship there, so... So let's get not much left in this show. Bill Dromo and Don Fargo against I said Doug Gilbert here. That's not Doug. That's Tommy Gilbert and Terry Sawyer. Did you Bill Dromo? Did we find anything about him that it might have been different?
No, I've heard the name. I think I've heard Cornette mention him in podcasts and interviews over the years, maybe just offhand, but nothing about him in particular that made me think, oh, yeah, that guy. I just knew the name sounded a bit familiar, and I don't remember Terry Sawyer. I mean, I know he turned here on Gilbert and all that.
That's the cool thing. I remember Terry. Terry,
tell me about him.
Yeah, he turned against Tommy. He was legit. He was a shooter. And I seen a match in Blauville, Arkansas. There is also footage from the Mid-South Coliseum of one of the matches that they had. It was him and Lou Thez. And here's something funny. The first time I went to wrestling, I actually knew, I thought to myself, this is a work, but I don't know how. I didn't say a work, but there's something going on here. I don't know what's going on. When I see Thez against Sawyer, in my mind, I thought this was a real match. I really did. So go back and watch that on YouTube. I'll put it on our Twitter. But if you'll know what I'm saying after you watch it. They do hold for hold, and I really thought Terry was never, did anything big. He really didn't. They talked about he got out of the business pretty quick. Apparently, he worked for. Everybody thought he was Buzz, he was.
I was
Buzz.
just about to say when they first said Terry Sawyer, and of course as grainy as the picture is on that old video, I was watching him really close because that's what I said to Rosie. Like, I think this is early Buzz Sawyer right here. And then after he got in the ring, and I was like, no, that's not him. But yeah, that was my very first assumption. Is like, oh, this is going to be some early Buzz Sawyer, but no, different guy.
Buddy Fuller apparently used him when he bought the Goulas promotion, but he never really made a big deal or anything. And then next, I was going to ask you about this. Did you notice whether they mentioned who that manager was during this match? Because I don't remember hearing his name.
No, and I was listening for it because I thought, okay, well, who's the manager?
Al Green is who it looked like, but I have no idea who.
Oh, no, it was. I take that back. Okay. They did say that at one point. They did say just kind of in like it was like almost after the fact, at the end where Tommy and Terry Sawyer was kind of having that standoff. I heard him say something about Al Green getting the guys out of here or something like that, and that was the only place I called it.
I've only seen Al a couple times. Tape, or pictures of him. So I guess next we had a match between Steve Brody, and I have no idea what happened to Steve Brody, and Coco Ware, who, man, this might have been his first year. I'm not sure. I didn't go back and look, but, man, he was small, young, but you could actually see he had talent.
Yeah, he was one of the earlier, high flyers of his day. I mean, to go back and watch it now, it doesn't seem like a big deal for what people are used to, but for the time, during his first couple of years, he was really, really stood out. And I've listened to some interviews with him where he talked about his early days in Memphis and how he broke in and some things like that. It's a pretty interesting story. I would recommend people, if you ever get a chance to get a shoot interview or see of any podcast where Coco talks about his early Memphis days. His early story is pretty interesting to hear.
Awesome. I big fan of him and Bobby Eaton. We talked about that with Dustin, Cool Kids Countdown, and it being just being both of them young and just bumping like crazy. They're such good bumpers. I was a huge fan of PYT's. Him and Norville Austin. I always thought Norville was so good. Big fan of them. Next, we had what we ended up with Expression Time, which was very little time. It was Pat and Mike Kelly, who were twins, and they were legit twins. Went against Lawler and Dundee, but we didn't get much of a match.
Weren't they in the car with Adrian Adonis when he died? The Kelly twins, I thought, or maybe it's different.
Not both of them.
Or one of them did. That's
Pat was killed. Yeah, Pat was killed in a car wreck in 1988. I didn't see who he was in a car with, but yeah, you could be right.
Yeah, he was in the carload of people with Adrian Adonis. So that was in '88 up in Canada where they swerved to hit a buffalo or something crazy.
Right. Well, you it's weird. All the times that I actually was on the road, nothing compared to these guys. We never even had a flat tire, so knock on. That was the cool thing. All right, just real quick before I ask you, the Mid-South Coliseum drew 5,100 for this week. They had Robert Gibson, Jackie Welch over the Patton, Mike Kelly. I don't guess they were getting a push. Joyce Grable was in, and she beat Lalani Kai. Terry Sawyer actually beat Luthez on this show. Joe LeDuc and Don Fargo were tag teaming. By the way, Don Fargo was on this show, and we mentioned him. He hit on my mom one night. He asked her if she wanted to go out with him. So,
Wow.
Yeah, they beat Valiant and Ferris by DQ. Chuck Malone beat Heather Feather by DQ. And then the Southern Tag Team titles, Jerry Lawler and Dundee defended the titles, beating the Bounty Hunters, and Chuck Malone got his hair shaved. So you probably know what I'm going to say, and I'm going to ask you, Gene, was it really that good?
I'm going to say yes, because watching, I mean, to somebody, if a younger person goes back and watches this, I'm like, oh, this shit's boring. How did anybody watch this back in the day? But to see how over a lot of those guys were, and like you said, to see a turn start to develop just with a promo, the fact they were able to do so much with so little. They didn't have to at the time they weren't having to hit people with cars and do over the top gimmicks and violence. It was a different time, but it was also guys that knew their craft and did it very well. And for that reason, and for guys like Lance and Dave who were very good at their job, I say it was that good.
I think so, too. They went on, like we said, Valiant and Ferris feuding with them in the main event. They ended up doing a no contest the first time. They beat them in a no DQ match, which I was kind of surprised with that. And it looks like then Dundee and Valiant did a couple matches solo. And then we kind of had something happen where we had Dundee and Lawler. I didn't go back, but by December the 11th, they drew 4,600 people for Dundee and Lawler in a 60-minute match. So that's just how
Wow.
I thought it was neat to see how Valiant was a heel. He came back as a quick baby face. He turned heel, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he was going against Coco Ware by December, so he's still a heel. And then December they finished out December with, Lawler and Dundee tagged. And Dennis Condrey and Phil Hickerson actually won the tag team titles from them. Then the very last show of the year, Austin Idol came in. Still not drawn very well. Well, 4,000 people probably throughout the time, and that was also during the holiday, so that was an excuse. All right, guys, same bad time, same bad channel on the best little wrestling podcast in the business. Be there! And as everyone knows, I love my mama. Thank you, Gene.
Thank you.